Call the roll, please.
Absolutely. And at this time, before we take roll, I did want to inform the committee that we have Member Minikis joining us virtually at this time. Member Minikis is joining us virtually under a just cause reason, under Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. He is dealing with a post-medical procedure that prevented or created a barrier to attending in person this afternoon. Member Minikis, is there anyone in the room with you who's over the age of 18?
No, I'm alone. Thank you.
Great. And then, as the committee is probably already well aware, Member Howard's remote address is already listed on today's agenda. We will have Member Jenny Biggs joining us shortly, and at that time, we will introduce her joining the meeting remotely under a just cause reason.
Can you turn up the volume a little bit?
Certainly.
Great. Shall we call the roll?
Absolutely. And starting with Larry Chu.
Here.
Chair Cole.
Here.
Member Jennifer Howard.
Here.
Vice Chair John McCauley.
Present.
Larry Minikis.
Present.
Pat Randolph.
Here.
Spencer Sias.
Here.
Rebecca Suggs. And we can just note for the minutes that Jenny Biggs is not currently present, but she will be joining us momentarily.
Agenda adjustments. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
None from staff.
Okay. Open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the Citizen Oversight Committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant to the Government Code Section 549.554.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting. Mute your microphone when not reporting out. Do we have any public expressions?
We do not currently have any attendees to the meeting, virtually or in person.
All right. Item 5, the Executive Officer's Report. Mark?
Good afternoon, everybody. I had an interesting day today. I got to go down to Stanford, so sorry for you Cal Berkeley folks. But I was invited to come down to governance and wildfire and environment, how governance, wildfire, and environment all come together type class. It was interesting. Discussed what MWPA is about, discussed the strengths of a multi-agency collaboration, and discussed some of the challenges of a multi-agency collaboration, and then also discussed about conflicting views within the community on how we need to get our work done. And so it was an interesting conversation, and I was asked to give them 2 questions to the mole, and then discuss them. The 2 questions I gave them, one was, how do we bring 17 member agencies along together in a consistent manner when the MWPA has no authority over any of the member agencies? And 2, the second question was, how do we make sure that all the voices within the community are heard when they potentially are resistant to the science that we're using and they present different science that may or may not be mainstream science? And how do we continue with our mission and still absorb all of our science, but not allow us to get into paralysis through analysis? So it was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed it. As you guys know, we're about halfway through the work plan development for 24-25. It's amazing that is our 5th work plan. And the staff is in a full court press right now because we need to have the JPA-wide budget proposals completed by Friday. That way the ATC can see what the JPA-wide size looks like, and that gives them the benchmarks for the zone budgets. And we are moving forward with the 80% threshold for each of the zones and a 20% priority project funding. Similar to what we did last year. They dipped their toe into it, didn't really exercise it as much as I thought they could have. This year, I hope they exercise it a little bit more. Ops is right on board with that. And then I was asked to talk about some of the technology and modeling that we're using right now. And I think more importantly, the different lanes that they're in and some of the intersections within those lanes. And Charlotte Jourdain, who, as you guys probably know, is one of my leads in bringing all of this together. It's funny that you asked that question, Pat, because at the exec committee and at the board of directors, we are going to be laying out all of the technology and all the modeling that we're doing and how they differ from each other or how they complement each other. But the thumbnail sketch is, I'll start with the first modeling that we did, and that's the evacuation egress risk assessment through STI.
And STI being Sonoma Technology.
Sonoma Technology, thank you. If I start using too many acronyms, stop me. So,
For him.
Yes.
right.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
yeah, too many TLAs and I've got trouble.
So that
Thank you.
was looking at wildfire risk, the ability to move cars up and down roads, the ability to communicate, and also factoring in some human nature historically when it comes to evacuations. That fire modeling that we used in that was technically for the evacuation purposes, but we're actually able to use it for project design. But the rankings are in quartiles. This is the most dangerous quartile versus safest or least dangerous quartile. So you don't necessarily get all of the information you need for everything we're doing, but you get trends. So you can see, wait, this area is going to be an area that we need to focus on.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the quartiles? I mean, what's on the X and Y axis if you're using a quartile model that I understand?
So we within that, and I can point you to another video that actually describes it a lot better. But we have fixed risk and non-fixed risks. Some risks we're going to be able to fix. Some risks we're not going to be able to fix. Right. And then we went through an exercise to rank those risks, and then through our GIS analysis, they combined them to analyze how much risk that roadway has. And we could segregate. We could say we can just look at it for the fire risk. We can look at it for the traffic risk. We can look at it for the communication risk, or we can aggregate it all. And it is compared to the rest of the county.
All right.
And Spencer, as I understand it, what this does is not tell you how to get the people out of there, but which roads are most dangerous, which ones need the
It
work.
allows you to prioritize your work.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
Then this is, I think, what precipitated Pat's question is that that project had a pause after task 4, because what we've created is a snapshot in time. How are we going to, first of all, dig a little bit deeper into that data? And how are we going to update the data so it's no longer a snapshot in time? And so that's what came to the board last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, was the proposal using existing budget funding. So there was no increase in the budget to how we are going to update so we could put in the information from our projects and then remodel it and get a little bit deeper into the data. So that's where Ladris, and Ladris is going to come up again. Ladris is a partner on that project, but more on the fire modeling than on the traffic piece. And we'll talk about where Ladris is on the traffic piece. The next intersection that we have is that we have our parcel level risk, and Jenny's in the attendees. We have our parcel level hazards collection through our defensible space evaluation program. And then we send that data to Willow Labs. They use 2 weather scenarios, the same 2 weather scenarios we used for STI, or the ingress egress risk assessment. And now we're able to find out what the hazards on each property are in a risk rating. And so instead of treating all hazards as equal, now we can rate the risks and we can treat the most dangerous risks first. Then we also have,
Does that apply to private property too?
that's all of our defensible space evaluations. However, we have a very strong security policy that we do not release the data unless the property owner says we can release the data. And when we publicly display that data, it will be amalgamated into a community level view rather than a parcel level view. So if that makes sense. But you may say, well, wait a minute, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan has it down to the parcel level view, but that's through data that was not collected through our defensible space evaluation program with the data security. So we feel that when we create that parcel level view and with our data security policy, we'd be violating our policy if we showed it at the parcel level. We are also using Willow Labs to model the change of fire behavior based on our vegetation management projects. And that's where it's a little bit different than Sonoma Technologies modeling, because we went from this flame length to this height of flame length. We went from this rate of spread to this rate of spread. We are going from this amount of fire up into the canopy to this amount of fire in the canopy. And so that's in a separate lane of Sonoma Technology, but it's very similar. So what we're actually exploring right now is how Sonoma Technologies work and Willow's work can be complementary to each other and merged into a single format. So we are working on that right now. Ladris, we have another, and John's is who helps us get connected with Ladris with traffic or artificial intelligence traffic modeling. And so what Google did for Mill Valley, we'll be able to do for the entire county. Plus, we'll be able to do it over and over and over and repeat the scenarios as many times as we want. And we have it available during an emergency. So we can see what is actually happening. We can also combine that with what the computer models are saying will happen. And it helps the fireground commanders to make a better decision about evacuations. So separate from where we're using Ladris with our evacuation study. One is a planning tool. One is a planning tool and can be operationalized. The other thing that we're doing, which is really, really new, actually it's not new. It started, some of this research was in the 70s, but it was really not, it was put on a table and we're reinvigorating it. And that's called pathways modeling. Most fire behavior models talk about the progression of the perimeter as like it's this line that moves like this, but that's not the way fires burn. Fires will take opportunities, paths of least resistance, paths where the wind is influencing the greatest, and it's like the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, and it'll take a run this way, and then over here there's going to be another run over here, and then they fill in the middle. But the older models just show what the ending perimeter looks like. So now we're starting to take pathways modeling, see where the fire wants to burn with the greatest intensity, and then we can compare that with the modeling that we've done on our shaded fuel breaks. We can compare that with the modeling that we're doing with property risk, and identify where these pathways are aimed at our communities, and have we strengthened those entry points into our communities to a sufficient degree. Number one. Number two, there's what we're starting to explore, and we consider San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone an example of this, SPLATs, or strategically placed local area treatments, where we know the fire is going to burn with high intensity. So we go in there and treat that area, not with the purpose of stopping the fire, but changing the fire behavior so that when it hits the community, it's with lower intensities rather than the high intensities. So that's where all the science comes in.
Thank you for all of that.
Is that your report? That's it? That's all?
That's it.
Okay, we have questions? Yeah. Questions?
I was just gonna ask Mark
I have a
a
question.
question as he started to go down that path. So if the modeling is able to determine how it looks after you've mitigated the risk, can you use, that's showing the difference between inherent and mitigated risk will allow you to demonstrate to the public what we're doing, right?
100%. That's one of the goals. We would rather have our work not tested by wildfire to show that we've been successful.
Right.
We would rather show that through modeling that our work is successful. One question that the Stanford kids asked me today was, well, how accurate are your models? And I said, well, let's start off with all models are wrong. And you come into with the assumption that all models are wrong, but in the weather world, they have lots of different models and they see which model is trending more accurately for a particular weather system. And when you see the predictions on the news, they're going with the model that's trending towards reality. We are starting to get so many different fire propagation models that we're going to be able to do this. We are starting already to do the same thing. We are doing multiple models And then we are seeing which ones align best with reality, and we run with that one. One of the things we're also being able to model with this is the return interval for our work. Instead of just going out there and looking, or having grasses every year, brushes every 3 to 5 years, timbers every 5 to 7, and using anecdotal we're going to be able to have, in this area, you should come back in this many years in this area. And so it'll help us for some long-term budget planning.
Other questions? Jennifer?
Hey, Mark, I have a question. When you first started talking about your visit to Stanford, you mentioned conflicting views, and I was curious if you could just give us 1 or 2 examples of the conflicting views that you encountered there.
So one of the conflicting views is that there's a body of science that says shaded fuel breaks, thinning the force, increases wind speed, increases fire behavior, and spotting. And there's only one tiny body of science that says that. The remaining body of science says it does not. And the people who are really, really vocal about that says that the science we are using is the out-of-date science, and the science that says that the wind speeds increase, spotting increases, the more contemporary science. But if you really dig into it, that's not the case. The growing body of the science supports what we're doing. The other one I would I point to is the use of herbicides. We avoid herbicides where we have to, or where we can, but there are projects where we must use herbicides if we're going to be successful. Otherwise, we have thrown good money after bad, or bad money after good, whichever way it goes. And so those are the 2 examples I used today.
Thanks.
Chair, I did want to inform the committee that member Jenny Biggs has joined the meeting.
Oh, good.
I'd like to bring her over in case she has any questions regarding the executive officer's report. And I did want to inform the committee that member Biggs has joined us from a remote location pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. Specifically, it was childcare that posed an unexpected barrier to her in-person participation this afternoon. But that does qualify as just cause under Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. Member Biggs, have you joined the meeting?
I have, thank you. And I had a question. Is it okay to talk?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anyone in the room with you over the age of 18?
No.
Okay, great. Please proceed with your question.
All good. Mark, thank you so much. It's super exciting to hear about all of this work. And I know there's a huge mountain of work behind what we see too. So thank you, because the description is really helpful. And I guess one of my questions for you and for the committee too is just, when you do all of this modeling work, it seems like most likely there will be very clear things that emerge as higher priorities for greater risk compared to other things that are, nice to have, but maybe not the highest priority. And I'm wondering what, as a Citizens Oversight Committee, we can do to make sure that you're able to focus on those priorities, and if there's anything that we need to be thinking about in how we're communicating or writing things up to connect those dots so that people aren't wondering why something, when you talk about the return intervals that are emerge and surface, or the areas where things would be highest value, so that you aren't having to answer, questions from people concerned about why something isn't happening somewhere else. It's just a lower priority. Anyway, it's maybe a longer term question, but I think that's a huge value of the prioritization. So how we can help show that work is happening.
And I would say that all of your leaders within your communities and helping share the factual information. And as well funded as we are, we are blessed to have the funding that we have. It's not enough to solve all the problems at once, and we do have to be strategic about our work. And for the first couple of years, we have been treating most hazards equally, and we are maturing to the point where we are not treating all hazards equally. When we're moving towards a system where we can be more strategic and hit the higher risks. So I think sharing that message, and also if there is, sometimes there's resistance to using a lot of science and technology rather than firefighters' anecdotal experience, residents' anecdotal experience. And we actually think, kind of along with what Larry was talking about, in the long term, we think this is a financially wise for us to spend the money on the modeling for renewal. But also, we've heard from state and federal government grantors that they're getting frustrated of sending money to entities to do work in the wildfire space and not seeing any type of measurable return on their investment when it comes to metrics. So when I talk about with the state and federal governments, the type of metrics that we're doing, we're very excited about it. And I think our demonstration of what our modeling is showing will actually avail us to more grant dollars.
Mark, I thank you so much for that. I know in ATC and Ops meetings, I've heard all these things, but they begin to flow together of Sonoma Technologies and Willow Labs and Ladris ADI, and they begin, and that was very clear and very helpful.
Believe me, a lot of people are confused about it.
Other questions? I am one.
Larry,
No, I've had my hand raised.
I'm sorry, Larry. Excuse me.
Sorry, no. Mark, I wasn't clear. When you were at Stanford, were folks questioning whether fuel should be left on the ground, or was that a separate conversation?
no, that was one of the challenges I presented to the students at Stanford, that we have people saying that.
Thank you. Okay.
Going back to the Stanford situation, I don't know if you were just talking to students. When I went up and testified with Connolly's commission, I was making the point that we had somehow got 17 different entities to come together to create an agency that was unique. Was there any discussion about that? Anything else like that going on throughout the country, much less the state? Or
Not in this particular setting with Stanford. However, Stanford has written a report on us, and we're sharing it. Okay. And we're seeing, governance-wise, I'm not seeing it as much as I'd like to see it, but I know that Truckee within an organization has passed a similar tax measure, but it's a single entity rather than a JPA or an MOU. It'll be interesting to see Measure H in Sonoma County, which will provide funding for wildfire prevention as well as suppression efforts. And they will need to create a governance model for the funding that comes through that.
Yeah,
Truckee's working with Ladris also, right?
Yes, they are.
anything else? Any questions? Any public comment? We don't have any. Do we have any here? Does anybody step up? All right. Discussion? We've had enough.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, moving right along. Consent calendar. The opportunity for public comment on consent agenda items will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent agenda. The committee may approve the entire consent agenda with one action, and the alternative items on the consent agenda may be removed by any committee committee or staff member for separate discussion and vote. We don't have any public comments, so, or if there's any motion by anyone to amend and change? Yes.
I need to split A and B out of separate motions.
A and B. Okay.
Sounds like there's no consent calendar left.
You want to separate them out as
Two motions.
two measures?
So if there's no objection, I would move that we would accept item A on the consent calendar.
Second.
And I have already sent corrections, which have been reappeared today, I think. So with those corrections made, it's,
These
Okay.
corrections are minor, I assume.
yeah.
Ministerial.
Ministerial, that's a good one. Okay.
The edits they've been incorporated, they were done so prior to the Brown Act come up, so those are present in the minutes.
So we have a motion and second on the
No,
floor.
you actually don't have a second. The reason why you don't have a second is because I was not officially at the meeting, and therefore I don't think I can.
Yeah, that's why I'm separating them too, because you know, I'm gonna abstain from the minutes.
Okay,
And before you go there, I have a question.
sure.
Was one of the edits, Martina, to do something about the 2023 version of the list of assignments?
So it sounds like we're pulling item B, and separating item A from item B in the consent calendar so that we can get a motion, and we have a motion and we're waiting for a second to approve the minutes, and then item B will be its own separate motion. And then, those, then you guys will be able to edit that item as is necessary.
Gotcha, thank you. And just FYI, it's really tough to hear Larry out here.
So like down here, I'll just speak louder then.
It's unfortunately it's there.
That's great. Perfect.
Better.
So it sounds like we have a motion from, oh, go ahead.
And I second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Vice Chair McCauley with a second from Member Randolph to approve item 6A, minutes of January 24th, 2024. And starting roll call with Member Jenny Biggs,
Aye.
Member Larry Chu,
Abstain.
Member Jennifer Howard,
Yes, aye.
Member Pat Randolph,
Aye.
Member Rebecca Suggs,
Aye.
Member Larry Minikis,
Aye.
Member Spencer Sias,
Abstain.
Vice Chair McCauley,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Cole.
I
Okay.
chair this time.
My apologies, sir. Chair Cole.
I don't want to be demoted.
I apologize, sir. And so we have two abstentions, one from Member Larry Chu and one from Member Spencer Sias. Outside of those, we have a vote to approve item 6A, the minutes.
Okay,
And so now for item 6B, for board committee monitoring assignments for 2024. I do believe that Member Rebecca Suggs had comments regarding this item.
Yeah, just asking why we were attaching the 2023 list of assignments.
Instead of 2024. So that is definitely an update to the attachment. I believe the assignments are the same, are they not, Member Suggs?
Well, it looks like the proposed assignments are in the staff report, and the other one is just a reference for what was last year.
Correct.
Exactly.
And so Member Suggs,
Fine. Yeah, if that's what we're doing, great. No problem.
were you comfortable with the assignments listed on the staff report?
Yes.
discussion, other discussion.
I make a motion therefore that we would also approve this item for consent.
Second,
Okay, and so we have a motion to approve item 6B, the board committee monitoring assignments for 2024 as listed on the accompanying staff report, with a second from Chair Kingston Cole to approve this item. Roll call starting with Member Jenny Biggs,
Aye, thank you.
Member Larry Chu,
Aye.
Member Jennifer Howard,
Aye.
Member Larry Minikis,
Aye.
Member Pat Randolph,
Aye.
Member Spencer Sias,
Aye.
Member Rebecca Suggs,
Aye.
Vice Chair John McCauley,
Aye.
and Chair Cole.
aye.
And that is a unanimous vote of all in attendance, which is the entire committee.
Moving right along, we have no action items. So we will move on to discussion items. First discussion item is the COC, diversity, equity, and inclusion. My report is I talked with Julie McMillan, Senator, and we had a discussion. She said, send me the materials that you provided to the COC, which I did. And she came back with an email, so I'll read you the pertinent sections. I have reviewed your materials and thank you for raising these issues, and also providing the research from TAM. At the MWPA board meeting Thursday, Mark will be mentioning in his executive officer's report that we will be forming an ad hoc board committee to consider edits to the JPA language. I will be a member of this committee, and we will include your suggested changes in our discussion and circle back with you as necessary. thanks again, et cetera, et cetera. That's where we are. Discussion purposes, Mark?
So we being staff between Megan and myself we have probably about 10 edits that we're recommending to the ad hoc subcommittee for the JPA, nothing earth shattering. And we went in and provided the why behind the edits. And then we included a note in the why, because those edits hadn't been pushed into that document yet. So we added a note that this is a recommendation that has come out and for their consideration. And then we did one last round of, yep, that looks good to me, to the working group that was myself, Dan Schwartz, Dan Eilerman, Jason Weber, and Megan. And now we've all got the thumbs up, and I'll be scheduling a meeting with the board ad hoc subcommittee.
Okay.
Within a month.
Questions? Yeah.
Is this recommendation coming from the COC or from staff?
I think it's the way I would look at it is that this was a joint recommendation from Kingston as an individual.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the COC.
Well, the COC didn't vote on it.
It affects the COC.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of out of our lane.
Larry, what did you say? Could you say it again?
Yeah, I just said that this type of thing is out of our lane.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And so I'm really confused about what actually is being recommended and certainly what's being recommended in our name. And it's not that I object to any of this necessarily. It's just, it does feel out of our lane.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your comments there.
So didn't at the last meeting, we decided that elected beetles, we were just gonna let it be, and then if it was outside of our lane, and it was gonna be dealt with at the board level, and what Kingston's just doing is saying that he's informing us that the board is acting on it, right?
Right. All right, yeah, there was no action required by the COC ever. I just brought it to your attention, and everyone discussed it and said, why don't you take it up, Kingston? And which is what I did.
Did we suggest that you talk to the board chair? I can't remember.
Yes. Well,
We did.
I talked with the board. I talked to Mark, and he suggested I talk to Julie. Yeah.
I think we have to be careful about what we do in the name of this committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Really, it's about what we're discussing, even if we don't take an action, because it leaves the public with the impression that this is a business item for us or something under consideration.
It's brought up as an informational item. Okay. Any other questions? No public comment? No deliberation needed, right?
We do not currently have any members of the public in attendance.
Thank you. Item B, the committee handbook use and consumption. I'll go first. I came to Mark and mentioned that TAM COC has a great handbook, lays out all the founding documents, everything you could ask for in its hard copy. And it was meant for new members. Then I was talking with Rebecca, and mentioned I was sort of pushing that, and Rebecca said, no, Pat and I are talking about doing this online. Just one bundle of stuff online. I said, well, in that case, let's have a discussion with the COC, put the item on the agenda, and see what works we can do. Hard copy on the website, or both. I have no fixed view on it.
Well, I speaking for Rebecca and or speaking for myself, I'm not quite sure Rebecca agrees. She can speak for herself, but I feel like it's really important that people interact with the website where the information is for the most part stored. Now, there are a few there are a handful of documents that aren't public. And Rebecca and I have talked about perhaps putting those non-public documents into a small binder. But I feel like we're creating a lot of work for ourselves and taking a learning experience away from new members if we put everything into a binder.
There's no
and
binder. They have that binder.
Yeah, and say, here's all the information that you want. The reason I say
Here,
that we're
here's the
making,
newbie. Here,
that I say that we're making work for ourselves is every time something gets changed, we have to change it in the binder where it gets changed on the website, and Mark's doing that. But and Rebecca, your views?
The same, and I think my main point is if people are going to have to find these things on the web anyway, why not have the learning experience be on the web or on the internet instead of a binder? Now, I will give a small example. Spencer, okay to give your example from this week?
Oh, absolutely.
So Spencer and I talked, he was using Martina's email to get to when and where the meeting's going to be and what was going to be on the agenda. And he had a little glitch in the experience. And so he contacted me and we talked, and over the phone with him looking at it and me looking at it, it took about 30 seconds for him to go, aha, I see it, I get it, I got it. Whereas had it all been in a binder, I think, first of all, it wouldn't have been the way he's going to have to find it next month. And it's not as quick and easy to find, and it would have required somebody to update it. So I use that as just one example of here's the new guy trying to find something. Let's let him find it the way it's really going to be. So
Awesome.
I would just vote for yes, maybe the things that are not on the internet in a binder for new people, and let them use that binder for however they're going to do it.
What items are those? What are you talking about? What are these secret items that don't deserve complete transparency? What are they exactly? Yeah.
For example, the list of members of the COC with our phone numbers. We're on the internet listed, but our phone numbers aren't there. Our email addresses aren't there, and they are on the roster, the list of us for us.
Yeah, here's something maybe the group can consider. Good idea with keeping it electronic. But when you say internet, you're not talking website, correct? I mean, if we created a shared space for our documents with only our access to it, then we wouldn't have to worry about public access to anything if it's still like a document that's work in progress or personal identifiable information, whatever the case. And then what does need to be published, of course, is, okay, what does the COC do? That's already out there.
Yeah, and I think what we were really talking about is the vast majority of the things we have suggested in the onboarding process is go to the website and find how you find a meeting. That we had put, down here, a few documents that are non-public, how we conduct our business, I'm not quite sure what we ever called it, Larry, Lucy,
What our
and
operating
John
procedures or something?
document that I think at one point in time
That's
was
published,
called,
that's in September, it's in the September minutes.
yeah, it was called Origin, Scope, and Standards, and I guess it is now public if it's in the September minutes, but anyway, I don't feel terribly strongly one way or the other, but I just think that we should, for most of the things that we're asking people to be able to find are from the MWPA website.
I think what I'm trying to avoid is to have staff have to manage permissions.
Oh, no,
Okay, because what happens is if you put it on a public website, unless we have a separate secured space, then if we do have a separate secured space for things that are not public yet, staff is gonna have to manage it.
no,
So-
what we were thinking is just print up those
Google Drive.
things and have a small binder for those things.
Yeah, or you don't even have to keep those in a binder if you think that having it electronic is always up to date, but just something as simple as, I don't know, Google Docs. I don't know if
Yeah.
your server has something that can
We do.
split out our documents, but.
And it's hard to see Larry's hand with the record, but his hand is up.
Oh, okay.
I just want to say, as the quote unquote environmental representative, you know where I'm going to go on this, which is less paper,
Please don't kill it.
less paper, less staff time, lower cost. So where we minimize it.
And Larry, just so you know, on our screen where you're sitting, the record button kind of hides your hand at times.
Oh, okay, I'll
So a wave might be good. And we do have a Google Drive account, so we can easily establish a Google Drive that is unique to the COC and easily provide permissions to you guys.
Thank
I
you.
think-
And speak as a newbie on this.
Yeah, I want you to.
Yeah. So I am the perfect person to be sent into the jungle to try to find things, because I will inevitably get lost each and every time. I just do. Which is why I ended up calling Rebecca and saying, where is this thing? Because I was specifically clicking on the February meeting materials and didn't see in the little type. What people think is on their website and how clear it is a huge, huge difference from the person who just comes in out of the blue.
Sure.
And I just know this because I managed websites, among the many things in my life. And I'm sorry. I agree that as you get more familiar with materials and websites, you can find your way around. And I agree with Larry that yes, if we can avoid printing stuff and we can manage costs better. But I also think really it ought to be made available as a PDF for those people who choose to print it, because some people might find that actually more convenient for themselves. So it's available electronically, but if you want to look at it as a PDF that would be printable by you individually rather than handed out, then you could do that. And so I think that's kind of a way to go. And I also agree with Larry's notion that if there's stuff that really the working group needs to use, then why not a Google shared drive where we would all have ready access to it, and it wouldn't necessarily be out there with information that we would want to have out there. So I'm cutting the baby in half here. I'm saying I'll continue to search the website. Don't think it's as easy as you think it is, because it isn't, and make it available as a PDF so it can be printed out.
It's getting more complicated all the time.
So I think if we bring it back to where the beginning was, do we have anybody thinking that a binder and having that for new people is a way to go, and we need to talk about it more? Or are we, as I'm hearing, all in agreement that no, we don't need a binder, we can just go to online resources, as long as when new people come on board or new people enter into the picture, we do have some hand-holding going on for a while, so people get used to where do you go and how do you find it?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, agree.
I would just take the whole binder index, put links in it, and have people go and look for it online.
You know,
Yeah.
alternatively, we could have one binder for a new member, just for ease, where they can just go through it. That's a possibility, just one master binder, perhaps.
And I'm gonna appoint you to put it together.
No.
There goes another tree. Oh.
Just a
How about we
thought.
let- Why don't Rebecca and Pat mull this through again, come up with
Okay.
something next meeting? So,
You bet.
okay.
Okay, you bet. Pat, okay for you?
Do we have any public discussion on this?
We do not currently have an attendance.
Okay. No further discussion here. Moving on, item 9, board committee monitoring reports. Executive committee, we have received report.
I don't think we had an executive committee.
I think the executive committee was canceled, and I think that was Lucy's. And
It's a very good thing that it was canceled, because I have been assigned to monitor it, and I did not monitor the non-existent executive committee. When does the
I think
executive
it was-
committee meet typically?
First Tuesday, first Thursday, 10 a.m.
All right, thank you.
And
You
by
can
the
get
way,
notices
Martina,
from the
could
webpage.
you give us all
You can request a notice from the webpage.
I know the board
In
and
the-
the executive committee,
NWPA
But those
thing, you
that
can
meet
ask
less
that you be
often?
notified.
if I don't,
Meeting.
the ops, the ATC, the finance committee. I think they follow a pattern, but I don't quite know what the pattern is.
So ATC is first Wednesday?
They do follow, for the most part, a pattern, but at times those meetings can be rescheduled. I would definitely say that our community calendar always has our,
But that means that you are going to the website all the time to,
You can,
the community calendar.
you can go to the record of meetings page,
Right,
and at the top of the page, right there,
right.
it says sign up here to receive notifications. You click that, you put your email and your name in there, and then when those meetings come up, you'll get a notice electronically, automatically in your email 48 hours ahead of the meeting.
Yeah, but I like to have them on my calendar
Yeah.
way ahead of that so that I'm not
That's around there,
scrambling.
yeah, it's around there.
So
I'll talk to
yeah,
Martina and get it.
Martina had created a schedule that she can be happy to share too.
Absolutely.
A calendar that shows.
Yeah.
And then, just so you guys know, early report, we will have a finance committee meeting on March
See, Larry needs to write that down.
March
right now.
5th at 1.
March 5th.
I'm not on the finance committee anymore.
Oh,
That's me.
okay.
That's me.
That's John and.
You.
You did the second one then?
I can never make a meeting anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, watch it. It's March what?
March 5th at 1.
and we'll also have an advisory technical committee meeting that Wednesday on the 6th, also at 1. And then executive committee is this coming Thursday, a week from tomorrow at 10.
I have the executive committee and the board are all on my, but it's the ones that meet less frequently that I.
And finance committee definitely does not have a
Schedule.
Although what you can generally count on, that we will want to have the finance committee completed in time, that whatever they recommend to the board is in time for us to put it on the board agenda. So unlikely to be the week of the board meeting, typically the week prior.
Where does the executive committee meet? In that next larger room?
I'll take you over when we,
Yeah,
It's
I
in the
poked my
giant
head
room.
in, I'm bumbling as usual into the wrong room.
We'll put it in your binder.
And the
Yeah, put in my binder was that.
Okay.
ops usually meets right like the day after or 2 days after ATC. Martina,
Well-
have you heard anything yet about ops meeting?
So it's actually, they're technically the week following, but
Ah.
we've had a lot of firsts on a Thursday. And so it's the first Wednesday and second Thursday, but when the first is a Thursday,
I've noticed
they're
that.
both the first Wednesday and the second Thursday.
So then,
Trying to keep that. Thank you.
do we have any hands raised on that?
That's why it was driving me nuts. I
That's-
thought,
It's the first landing on Thursdays is what messed us up.
okay,
Okay,
Which also affects when this meeting occurs, if it's during the, it throws the whole schedule off.
so
fourth Wednesday.
Is this
CSC.
meeting.
This
Yes.
meeting is
Yes.
fourth Wednesday.
Right. It will be recurring on my calendar.
So we don't need any public comment on a committee that was canceled, do we?
No.
All right. Next report, advisory technical committee.
And so Mark stole most of my thunder because all of the committees talked about the same stuff this month. So what I was going to say was they talked about Willow Labs and anyway, so we don't have to talk about any of that. So I'll just say, then the next two big things that everybody was reminded of is that the JPA wide proposals are due March 1st, and that Mark already mentioned that. And then specific local proposals for the work plan are due March 15th. My understanding of the conversation that happened around that, Mark, if you could listen and make sure I'm not lying, is that once the ATC says, okay, our proposals are ready, and they ship that off to the ops committee, which is the process, that means that it's now public on the portal. Is that true?
Should be, yeah.
So then that also means that the COC would have access to the portal because we're the public. So on the 15th, you should be able to go look at the portal and see proposals. I'd say that might be a little bit squishy of a date this time. That's just a guess. But the process would be proposals, the specific local proposals would go from ATC to ops. Ops would then say, yep, that looks good, or no, and here's our discussion. And then after that, they get a month or so to look at it, squish it around. And they're thinking that the first week of May, it'd be ready to go to executive committee and then board.
Yep.
So we could start looking at proposals for the we are talking the 24-25 fiscal year proposals.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'll handle clerking while Martina steps out.
Any questions about ATC?
Questions, concerns? Public comment? No.
Nobody there?
No. Okay. Operations committee report.
It's much the same. I'm following both Mark and Rebecca now with a lot of the same information. It was a very interesting meeting, but I think the biggest thing for our purposes is what happens next, that we're going to get to start looking at the work plan. And I'm always bemoaning the fact that we're actually trying to write a report about a work plan that happened, that was created a long time ago, and that what's happening right now is really informative and educational, but we're not going to be reporting on it for a long time. But about halfway through this meeting, after a Chipper Day update and Anne's review of the calendar, there was a report by Charlotte and a super interesting report about Willow Labs by Scott Farley. And it's all, it's the stuff we've already talked about today, what Mark's already talked about. But it's just very exciting to hear about what we're actually doing. And anyway, that's all. Any questions?
Yeah, I too am intrigued by this notion of writing a report that's out of date before you start writing it. And I'm curious about why. What's the setup that has resulted in this idea of us reporting on stuff that's way past and not reporting on more of this kind of stuff? I just don't understand it. I'm not debating it. I just want to understand the timing.
It's retrospective.
we are basically here to answer the question, did the agency spend the money in compliance with the enabling legislation?
Okay, I understand that, I guess, but doesn't it come out over a year after the year we're reporting on was completed?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's our fault.
Yeah, and that's our fault, that we have year one, for various reasons, we got way behind. And year two, for various reasons, we got way behind. And we seem to be way behind again. It would be great if we could be getting this out in February. And I think that the day will come when we can get this out, a report out in February.
The structure I wrote for this last year's report, which is reported on in September, which we'll be talking about just in a minute in terms of items for future conversation, acknowledge that there's an ability to be doing some of the work during the year rather than after the end of the year. But we got to get through this year's before we can start jumping on next year's. But once we finish this year's, I think we can start the process of looking at next year's, assuming that staff have done their work contemporaneously rather than after the fact.
Right.
Which there's no reason why you couldn't be doing the work contemporaneously.
Right.
Right.
I agree.
So I think we're moving towards a faster process.
I do think that it could be really helpful for all of us to actually have a better understanding when the work plan is being created, even though we're not going to be reporting on it until way in the future. I think it just helps to understand more about how things are done. And it also, maybe it can be part of how we articulate our oversight, that we watch all of these meetings and that we're looking as we go along to see if there's anything that we need more information about or need to know more about. And I'm just speaking without really a clear, I've just been thinking about this a lot, so I don't have anything really specific to say. Just from my own perspective, going to ops meetings and getting a better handle on how things work is really helpful.
I
Go ahead.
totally agree with Jennifer's comments about understanding when and how and getting in on it much sooner. And I know it's not we have had this discussion before, that it's not our job to speak out contemporaneously or extemporaneously about projects as they're getting proposed, et cetera. However, we are the Citizens Oversight Committee. And I do think as citizens, we should be looking at it as it's happening and understand, as Jennifer said, understand what's happening when it's happening, and not 2 years later saying, oh, well, that wasn't good.
And not to get us to drift too far off agenda, but to your point, Spencer, there's, in the document that John and Rebecca were working on, there's formal actions, formal recommendations that the COC makes, but then there's been informal discussions that we as staff have said, wow, that's a really good idea. We need to take action on that before it becomes a formal action. So there has been some more, we've been a little bit more nimble than following, just waiting for the report to come out.
So, and I don't want to keep us off the agenda here, but I do want to propose that we put on the next agenda or an agenda, some future agenda, the idea of coming up with a project management plan for putting out this report, so that we actually start getting some deliverables and some times and stuff like that, and we don't actually enculturate this notion of delivering a report over a year after the year we're reporting on it. I just think I'm glad, I know we're new and we're moving in that direction, but it feels that I'm concerned that the citizens at large would feel like we're irrelevant if we're not actually a little more on top of it. And so can I ask to come back in the agenda with the idea of maybe forming a subcommittee that could put together a project management plan on this?
We've already got a document that we did it in September, and I'm actually going to, Rebecca and I have something to talk about. I mean, just hold that for a second until we talk about future agenda items.
Okay.
Okay.
I think with anything, it's about execution.
Okay.
We don't have a problem with calendar.
Okay.
Except the fact we're not staying on the count.
We promise to get better all the time. Okay, any other discussion? Any public comments?
We do not currently have any.
Are we still talking about
Yeah.
operations? Okay.
I think we finished.
Well,
Oh, do we have, I'm sorry.
I have I attended the board meeting and have some notes on the board meeting. So one of the things that came up in the board meeting that applies to us is that the board is setting up an ad hoc committee to review the language of the JPA agreement and make some changes to that because many people have noticed many things that were not as things have worked out in practice. The way they were envisioned isn't necessarily. So I would encourage everybody in this group, if you think about things that COC language that's in the JPA agreement, now would be the time to let Mark or I guess Mark know of things that might need to be changed because as you all know, it takes going back to 17 different agencies to change this language. So we don't want to miss this opportunity if there are things that need to be changed.
With the caveat that you would be coming to staff as a member of the community rather than a citizens oversight committee.
Right.
But as a COC, we've already come forward with some specific recommendations.
Absolutely.
Oh, somebody else have the meeting open in the room?
Sorry, I'm trying to come back in.
So one thing in relation to that I thought was sort of interesting is Bruce Goins mentioned adding language about monitoring, because all the language in the agreement talks about preventing fires, but now we've realized you have to monitor things into the future. And that was one of the examples that he brought up. Also important to know that Mark and others have been partnering with insurance companies to help avoid cancellations and figure out how to lower costs as we become more fire efficient. And I'm trying to figure out what I meant here by this. Oh, I know. A discussion about the way the Defensible Space Program works. And those of us who were involved in the meetings envisioning this whole organization had always envisioned that the defensible space would be done by the NWPA as a whole. And then Novato expressed a very strong opinion that they wanted to be able to do their own. And then the very first year, Mark realized that there was no way that.
Well, it was before I was even hired.
Yeah. That there was no way that they, so what has happened is now you have the D-Space Alliance, which is central, originally was Central and West Marin, and now Southern Marin has joined in with that. The reason I bring this up is Kathleen Cutter worked under the Ross Valley Fire Department to oversee the D-Space Alliance. And now we're bringing that in under, so that rather than being an employee of Ross Valley Fire, well, whoever gets
They
hired,
would be cheaper.
two people are going to be hired as full-time to run the D-Space Alliance. And they will report to Mark rather than, and I only bring it up because I envisioned this little tiny organization to begin with. And it keeps growing and growing, but it's necessary growing and growing. I think that, and one very important thing, there was a conversation about how MWPA is a mouthful, and if Rebecca were there, she would not be allowed to say MWAPA anymore. They emphasize that it's important to develop more of an identity, and that Mark and friends are referring to this as Marin Wildfire, not Marin Wildfire Prevention Associate or Authority. So we should all get used to, for PR reasons, of saying Marin Wildfire.
And so we're historically, you would see Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, parentheses, MWPA.
Yeah.
We are going,
Marin Wildfire.
well, we'll say the first time we'll say Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, and we may do parenthetical Marin Wildfire or just say Marin Wildfire the rest of the way. We're trying to get out of the habit of typing MWPA and just put Marin Wildfire, because you ask people what's the resident and what's MWPA, they don't know, but you say what's Marin Wildfire and they know. So we're starting to go down that path.
Yeah, and I think it's so confusing to a lot of people that Fire Safe Marin has been around for 30 years. And Marin Wildfire has been around for 4. So that's my takeaways for the board meeting.
Can I just ask, remind me what the board of directors meeting is, what?
Third Thursday at 3.
Third Thursday.
Well, I would like to add to
Go
the
change
report.
it on, no matter what.
Yeah.
When we have a moment. Also, there's a presentation from Ann, I think, on Sonoma Tech and the risk assessment mapping that's being done, and it's very robust. And if you've not visited the site and actually seen the mapping, it's really, it's worth your time. There are various ways to get to that link. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm on the map. You can get to it from the board meeting, from Ann's report, and you can click right through to the mapping. And Mark, maybe you want to add something to that, but it's a really robust tool.
Is it the public viewer for the evac ingress egress risk assessment?
Precisely. Thank you.
If you go to our projects page, you can pull it up.
Pull it there. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, discussion?
Just one quick thing, I just wanted to make sure I understood as far as D-Space was concerned. So I recall there were 4 groups, and then it's become 3 groups. So are we still 3 groups? Is that where we are?
We're 3 groups, and I think the hope is we will become 2 groups. And I think Novato will always want to have their own program.
Okay, just wanted to keep score. That's all. Thank you.
All right, moving right along, Finance Committee.
Good news, no meeting in February. Okay, 4 words.
Moving right ahead.
Okay.
All right, annual report, committee reports, Volcom.
So to Spencer's comment about why it's taken us a year to do 2 years to look at something. So as far as local is concerned, we've been waiting. I mean, last year's recommendation to Mark was you have to be much more robust with regards to the record that you keep regarding the MWPA's responsibility to be comfortable that the expenditures are in line with the agreement. You don't just cut checks, right? So that process has been developing. We've been flexible. We've been waiting for Mark to give us the go-ahead. I asked him last week, where are you? He's not quite there yet. I think that we need to have a date. Sorry, Mark, I didn't call you ahead of time. But I mean, can we commit that within 30 days we can start doing our work?
Yep.
Okay, so within the next 30 days, we'll start doing our work.
The big delay is getting the data one out of San Rafael PD.
Well, you got their money. Okay,
That's
you have
been helped.
a lot of power there
It's
with
been
all
held-
of
Well,
them.
we've held back checks this year.
Okay, so that's my point. You have a lot of power. So let's get going so we can do our work. So that's my report.
Any other discussion around that item? Public comment?
currently do not have any attendees.
All right, B, item B, defensible space.
So I told Jennifer that I would make a report on our committee, which is Jennifer and Jenny and myself. And we have talked to Mark several times, and Mark has been very forthcoming with information. I feel a little bit like I'm being asked to be a finance committee because the information is all numbers. I'm personally still not really sure where we're going with this. There are things in my head that I think are important, but they would maybe even take Willow Labs or Sonoma Technology to do the analysis that would be, that one thing that pops out to me in looking at the defensible space information is, and by the way, we followed John's suggestion that we're looking at San Rafael, and then we picked one other, and the one other was the Defensible Space Alliance. And I've been looking at the San Rafael information, and Jenny and Jennifer have been looking at the information for all of those that make up the Defensible Space Alliance. And one thing that occurs to me, and then I'm told, like, this is policy, not, that we have to stay in our own lane. But one thing that I wonder about is San Rafael is coming more and more to have full-time employees. And I looked at those numbers and I added up all the benefits, and it's very expensive to have full-time employees. Whereas the Defensible Space Alliance has mostly seasonal employees, and they don't come with all of those benefits. And then you wonder, okay, what's the results you get from full-time as opposed to the results you get from seasonal trained? And that's what I don't really know the answer to. Do you get your money's worth out of full-time? But anyway, that's just to say, I see things like that one could delve into. But then I don't know whether, that's not our lane or whether that is an appropriate thing, and whether we have the bandwidth to do something like that. Jennifer?
I don't really have anything to add. I'm just trying to sort through the information that we have, figure out what we don't have, and develop questions for Mark about anything that we have questions about. That's all. I'm sorry. I don't have anything more to add right now.
Are you calculating full-time employee with benefits? For some reason?
Oh, yeah, we've got the numbers from Mark for San Rafael, and it shows, I added up the, I got my little calculator out and added up all the numbers, and it becomes very costly.
Sure.
When you are paying for the benefits of.
It's probably plus 50%, right?
Well, and I know that most places use a formula of about 25%, but
Not public sector. Not
Yeah.
pub, no.
They have to find.
But-
Not with firemen.
They're not safety employees.
Yeah,
That's the cheaper part.
right. That's why I said 50%.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not, in Mill Valley, it was like 80. It was about 80.
Yeah, you're right.
80 for fire and 50 for
County
everything.
was 72.
I'm just telling you roughly.
but you know, I mean, I added up the numbers and it's, and of course, defensible space is really personnel. There's
Yeah.
not much other costs for defensible space. But that's a curiosity to me. Do you get your money's worth from having full-time, year-round people doing? And what do they do in the off-season? And I know there are plenty of things for them to do. but-
Well, remember the work plan specifically addressed the question of personnel and COC within its wheelhouse to ensure that if you're paying somebody full-time, that they're doing stuff full-time, which is in compliance with the ordinance, right?
Right.
And that's right in that document we were looking at, so, which is the famous ranger question that we continue to use as an example.
On the pensions, a defined benefit or defined contribution?
Well, and again, you fall into this issue of most of the cities in the county have fathered in these
Defined
very
benefit.
expensive defined benefit.
Yeah, you're either in PERS or MSERA, that's it, right?
When fire employees have defined contribution, right?
I don't know.
I know these two council members who wrote a 70-page report on that topic a few years ago. They talked about the costs, so if you guys want to see it, I'll give it to
Marin
you.
Wildfire or Marin Fire?
Run fire.
Marin Fire is defined benefit from MSERA.
What?
If they're a part of MSERA.
Any rate, that's where we are. And questions that pop into my little brain and need a Willow Labs or somebody
Oh, they
to
can't see it.
be able to do the research to figure out whether they're really whether full-time employees or seasonal employees, you get the better bang for the buck.
Is that the kind of question that we can, is that in our lane, or are we drifting into policy decisions that are being made
And
by?
that's, yeah, I think that's developing.
My reaction is that it's a board responsibility to assess those kinds of matters, and you can't be oversight and be management at the same time,
Right.
right? So,
You make an observation.
but you can make an observation, exactly, right.
Okay.
And then Kingston, just so you know, you can't see on the screen, but Jenny Biggs has her hand up.
Oh,
You all, you ready for me?
yes.
I was going to say, hearkening back to the earlier conversation about the modeling and the prioritization, that this is of course retroactive, so it'll take a couple of years to get there. But I think what would be really exciting eventually when we're doing the annual report is to be able to look at the work that's happened and be able to connect the dots back to the things that were prioritized, to be able to show that the work on the ground is happening where the greatest priority has been placed for decreasing risk. So just sort of a future wish when we think about the way that we're looking at defensible space and other parts of the annual report, so that we can really focus on the outcome metrics and not just process metrics that, give us an indicator of what something costs, but not necessarily what we're getting for it.
Other thoughts? Public comment?
And I know that Jenny has said, and I wish I could say it in as nicer words as she had early on, but it would really be nice to feel like we were making a contribution where we were making this organization better, that we were able to do something. Jenny, I don't know what your words were, but I feel that rather than just after the fact,
Yeah.
looking at things and being told that we have to stay in our lane. And maybe I'll go run for office, so I can change lanes.
Two-lane highway, right? Okay. Any other points on this?
It's sort of interesting, I just wanted to, because if you're moving money into full-time positions and you're covering pensions and everything with it, then clearly what's happening is that, you know, money's heading into, for lack of a better word, bureaucracy, and it moves off the front lines. That would appear ultimately to diminish the reach of the program. I guess that's the concern that I'm hearing raised, but I don't know what we can do about it.
And not that you don't need,
Yeah, you need people to,
you need some people there all the time organizing your program, but just, you know, is that the best model for your guys walking around ringing your doorbell?
So I, for one, think it's inconsistent with what we told the public, what was told of the public when this thing was passed. I mean, the thing was supposed to be not heavily pension oriented.
right.
And I think that first off, it's a board responsibility. It's not, but there is still within our guidelines, the ability to make a recommendation. And I'm trying to hold my tongue because there's something I want to talk about later in the agenda. And I think we're drifting too far. I would suggest that we move on, and then let me say what I want to say when I'm in the right spot.
Okay.
Which is
Anybody else? You got it. All right, moving right along. Core, report. Rebecca.
Yeah, and I'm dealing with some technological issues, so you don't have me on camera. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Sounded like Gilder.
Say again?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
So we met with Mark. We gave him our list of questions. We got answers to, gosh, I don't know, most of them. We have a couple that we were going to follow up on. We have a draft of our report, and we are at the stage of reviewing that. Depending on the answers we get back or the additional research we're doing, that could change some of what's in the report. And what we have discussed doing, I don't know that we're thinking of doing, but we're discussing doing, is next month previewing what we're going to report and having a discussion about it to see, does everybody agree we can speak with one voice and say this, or do you guys want to say, no, not our lane, not our thoughts, not one voice, you know, whatever you want to say about it. That's where we are. Question?
You win.
Yeah.
Best report.
Yeah.
We're getting there as fast as we can.
You're in
I
first
can't believe
place.
it. Yeah, mostly it's Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca, for doing all the work. And Spencer's just coming on board. I think we'll have some next month.
That's great.
I do. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, we no longer have a finance committee. So how do we want to handle yes or no answers on the metrics that we normally use?
So that's in the memo I wrote back in September.
Yeah.
And what it said specifically was that once the report, the audited financial statements have all the data that we want in them, and even the internal reports have all the data we want in them, that we will, in one of our future meetings, collectively look at it and formally say, okay, you're in or you're out, because it's a 10-minute exercise. So it should be something agendized as we progress towards the end of our report.
And the chew table is complete, as we are calling it within Marin Wildfire now.
What's it called?
The chew table.
The chew table. Okay. It's kind of hurt my feelings here a little bit, but okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so
Easier.
He got here
Oh,
first.
that's part I wasn't clear about, so we're gonna do it as a group rather than.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, assign a couple people to present.
Come see for yourself. I mean, it's just gonna be so obvious, either you're in or you're out, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's complicated. so.
Wandering off agenda here. Any other comments on the core? Public comments?
You know, this didn't end up on the agenda, but it's one of the things we have to do as part of.
That's all right. Item 11, committee members' requests regarding future agenda items. I
That's
think John has
chance. Yeah, I've got
to say.
something, yeah. So at our last meeting, Rebecca and I had a conversation about the question of whether we should be looking at budgets versus actuals. And frankly, I was a little frustrated by that because we had, I thought, previously covered that with some level of detail. But after the meeting, the two of us have gotten together and we've talked 2 or 3 times now, and it's been quite productive. And it's actually along the lines of some of the questions that Pat was just struggling with about what's inside our lane and what's outside our lane. So I went back to that document that I put together in September and I amended it. The thing is about 7 pages long, so don't freak out. I amended it by about 2 paragraphs. Okay. And we've gone back and forth and looked at it a couple of times. We're in the same neighborhood, but we're not yet in agreement, which is absolutely fine. And we're going to continue our discussion a little bit further. I have to do a little more drafting to kind of lay out something that I think would be productive for us to talk about at our next session. And by then, either we're agreeing or we're not, which is fine. Either one's fine, but we'll have enough, I think, meat on the bones to further our dialogue about this question of what's the difference between, governance and oversight, and where we start and where we stop and all that. So I've been trying to bite the tongue because I could have got into several of these things earlier because they're examples of the kinds of things which are worth discussion. But I think we'll have a productive discussion on that topic if we'd be allowed to put it on the agenda next month.
Okay.
Right, Rebecca?
Yes, John.
Yeah. Now, we've had some very good dialogue on this topic. So.
We have.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Okay, anything else? Any other items?
Kingston, I have a question. On the minutes from our last meeting, it said that you were going to talk to Julie McMillan about her concerns from the last report. Did you have a chance to do that?
I thought it was on the DEI issue. That's what I talked to about.
Oh.
With DEI?
I thought
Diversity,
that,
equity, and inclusion. Was there something else? There was something else.
well,
No,
Julie,
it was the whole thing about whether we, in our wording, had some statement that said everything was okay, and why are you getting an A versus a B? And we said, that's not the way we wrote it. And we said, we're not going to rewrite the whole report for the comment, and you were supposed to talk
It's
about
the
it.
excellent versus good.
Yeah, that's right. Excellent
Yeah.
versus good.
Yes. No, I
Julie-
didn't bring that up with her.
okay, just to review her concerns. We use the word good in our report, as you just
Yes.
mentioned. And what she specifically requested was that if we were providing a B grade, she didn't say it this way, but if we weren't providing an excellent grade, she really wanted to know what we thought should be done differently. And yeah, so that was her feedback that I brought back to the meeting last. And I just think it would be respectful to respond to her.
I thought we weren't beating a dead horse, but
Yeah, we already resolved it. It's just a question, you have to have a chat with her.
yeah, I'll have a chat with her. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that was what was resolved, and that was what is in the minutes that we all just,
Talk to her. And
yeah, that you
report
were
back.
to have a conversation with her.
She'd be so happy to hear from me.
As we do the work plans, one of the things we might want to consider is the type of subjective language that we use in the reports.
Larry can't hear you.
You might want to consider subjective or unsubstantiated metrics that we use as qualifiers, because if you say good, the way we used it in the context of that report really doesn't tell you one way or another what good means. So,
No, it's subjective.
yeah, so you know, one of the things I'm suggesting is that as we discuss the next report, that we figure out the way to write this in a way that we don't have subjective language.
Well, at least in this case, we'll all change our minds. I'm sure it's gonna be excellent. Yeah, that's just the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, but
Going
if
back-
we use excellent, we need to know what excellent means. You know, there are objective measures to place you in that point. Because with the financials, it's a yes or no question. Did you comply?
Well,
with-
that's just about transparency. That was the subject. You know, general transparency is good, all right, for the, as
Yes,
opposed to excellent. I don't know how you're gonna.
Well, you could say superb.
but see,
As
that
I
is-
don't think we need to get into this
No,
now. I
and-
think we
and-
just
and
be
this is
aware
not-
of it when we
Yeah,
do our
this is
report.
not on the
Right.
agenda. What I'm suggesting is that we need to have this conversation.
We will, yeah. Let's, I mean, it's the final nail I guess, in last year's annual report coffin, so. That's all I can say. It's just, it keeps going on and on. So I'll talk to Julie, and next year, I'm sure we can come up with a metric that will satisfy all you CPAs. So, all right.
Well, I mean, if you say deficient in an audit, there's a meaning to that.
No, I know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying some things in life, it's outside themselves the metrics, that's all. But we'll work it out. We'll discuss it further. Any other discussion items, Peter, right? Then I officially call this meeting adjourned.
All right, item 11, adjournment.
Yeah, right.
See you, everybody.
Bye.